You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday, where we're actually going to be covering a question that 98% of health professionals got wrong. It included doctors, dietitians, personal trainers, etc. People in the health field when it comes to our bodies and losing weight. So I'm going to share that question with you in just a moment. But what I really want to go over today is, how do we accumulate body fat? How are we best able to get rid of it? When we begin to accumulate body fat, what does it really say about our body and what type of situation that it's in? And then we can begin to answer that question of, where does that fat actually go when we begin to lose it? And so these are all important questions. The reason is this: our goal is to become the healthiest lean version of ourselves. And I say that from a wellness-based perspective. I certainly do not believe that most people need to be walking around with six-pack abs. And I would say for the most part, you're actually, to get there, you might even be a little unhealthier than a lot of people who just have a leaner physique, a flatter stomach, but maybe not that six-pack abs. Because, again, what it takes to maintain that sometimes isn't all that healthy. But again, we can talk a little bit more about that. And I also don't want people to think that you need to be super lean in order to be healthy. What I recommend is, I do recommend staying within a healthy BMI for most people. It still does fit. And then for men, you can go back to the body fat, women body fat, that I've done shows on this before. But men, really, ideally, you want to be between 14 and 18%. Of course, you can be lower. I mean, you really can. Single-digit body fat in the 8-9 range, totally acceptable. As we start to go lower than that, well, that can be a little bit more challenging nutritionally, and are we pushing our body too much to a catabolic zone? For women, 18 to 22%, really healthy range to be in. And again, we don't really want to go below 14 to 16% because then there can be issues with fertility and amenorrhea and all sorts of different stress on the thyroid in the body. Now, again, could you be a little higher and still be healthy? Yes, but you want to look at waist to hip ratio. You want to look at fasting glucose. You want to look at your overall health-based parameters. And that's what I talk about. I talk about health in general. I'm not talking about walking around with six-pack abs all the time. That's not necessarily what I equate to health. There's nothing wrong with having six-pack abs as long as you don't take it too far. But really, for most people, it's unnecessary. And in order to get there, they might have to sacrifice too much for longer-term health. So again, that's not really the topic of today's discussion, but I just don't want people to believe that they have to be super lean in order to be healthy. But we do want to be typically within a healthy BMI. Again, it works for most people. Not everyone, but most people. And we know that if you're a healthier BMI, well, your chances for cancer, type 2 diabetes, and a lot of other heart-based and cardiovascular-based conditions goes way down. So it's at least something to shoot for, okay? So now let's talk about, though, really, I've done this show before, and I want to link this up and embed this today. So if you head over to stephencabral.com/1475, I want to see if my team can find the podcast on a calorie is not a calorie. Because I'm about to go through grams and calories today. You need to know it, but you can't just substitute, which that point system out there, I'm not going to name names, but that point system, counting points for food, was a very unhealthy way of looking at foods. Because you could say, oh, okay, this candy bar here is 50 points or so. And, this 2 plates of broccoli over here, well, that's 50 points too. So as long as I'm just eating by points, I'm okay, I'm healthy. Now, luckily, they've changed that a bit, but we don't want to look at food as points. It's not that. It's about health, and it's about eating good quality whole food. But again, we still want to learn, what does it mean? Where do these calories come from? So think about this. Really simple math here. Okay, let's say you get 20 grams of protein at your breakfast. Okay, 20 grams of protein And it's basically regardless of where you're getting that at, okay? 20 grams of protein, we multiply by 4 for calories, okay? So for those 20 grams, we multiply by 4, and we are going to get 80 calories. Okay, and again, to keep this simple, if we have 20 carbohydrates at that breakfast meal as well, carbohydrates, every gram is also at 4 calories. So if we eat 20 carbohydrates, okay, 20 grams of carbohydrates, that multiplies by 4, and we get 80 calories. Okay, well, now we're up to 160 calories for this particular meal. Now we look at fats. And again, this is not, before I say it, it does not mean that fat is bad, but we have to look at it a little differently because we're talking about body fat today. Now, fat itself is 1 gram. For now, it's equal to 9 calories. So you have double the amount of calories in 8 gram of fat versus carbs or protein. Again, does this mean fat is bad? Absolutely not. I have fat, good healthy fat at all 3 of my meals. So we want to just understand, though, that the amount of energy, and that's what I want to talk about next, the amount of energy is actually greater in fat-containing foods than it is in carbohydrates or protein. And this is why. That calories are a form of energy. That's the point that I want to make today. Not that carbs are bad, protein's bad, or fat is bad. Because believe it or not, you can have all different variations. So for example, if I have 20 calories from broccoli, or let's say 100 calories from broccoli, well, that's a good amount of broccoli. And that comes with a lot of phytonutrients, and it actually comes with a lot of fiber, and that's going to be lower in the glycemic index. Now, if I get 100 calories just from processed fruit juice, well, that's going to react very differently in my body. That's going to spike my blood glucose levels, it's going to spike my insulin levels, and it's going to then cause me, most likely, if I'm not using that sugar for an exercise or activity, it's going to most likely cause me to store that as body fat as long as my liver glycogen levels and my muscle glycogen levels have already been filled. So this is important to look at, is that fat, eating fat in our diet does not cause us to become fat or overweight, because carbs can actually become body fat and protein can become body fat. Somewhere along the way, people thought that eating protein didn't actually cause body fat. Well, here's the thing. If you eat a big steak or you take down a whey protein shake, it can most likely and will most likely spike your blood sugar levels as well. So that's just, let's say, by itself in isolation, just as we're testing anything. So now that could spike blood sugar, that spikes insulin, and then we can also begin to add body fat in the same way. Again, I'm not talking about thermogenesis today. I'm not talking about how difficult it is to break down proteins and why that's slower digesting. We're not going into that today. We simply want to talk about the actual energy that is stored in our food, because this is going to make sense in just a moment. So we know now that fat in it contains more energy, 9 calories per gram. Now, the interesting thing is this, though. As we store body fat in our body, that's obviously very different than the food that we're eating. We don't take meat fat, or we don't take eggs, we don't take avocado or olives or anything like that, and we don't just turn it into body fat. It just doesn't turn into body fat. We need to actually break it down and then store it as adipose tissue, or increase in adipose tissue. So what we want to talk about is this, though. Why does your body store this body fat? You know what I mean? I think it's a pretty good question. So a couple reasons. One is that we are actually taking in more energy that our body burns on a daily basis. Okay, so if your resting metabolic rates, or your basal metabolic rate, is 1,300 calories per day. Okay, that means if you weren't to do really anything for the day, you'd burn about 1,300 calories. Now, if we take in digestion and your activity level, it might shoot up to 1,650 calories per day. Okay, so now someone, let's say they weigh 120 pounds, they're 5'2", their activity level added in creates their metabolic rate for the day, and that is going to be 1,650 calories. Okay, well, if we now take in more than 1,650 calories, we'll begin to add more body fats. Okay, now there's caveats to this, and this is why it can become a little complicated, but I want to share that with you today. Now, how do we offset that? Well, we could demand our body produce more energy. We can ask for more energy from our body. And so now, if we were to eat more, let's say we ate an extra 200 calories for the day, It won't be stored as body fat because we're going to do 200 extra calories worth of exercise or something that boosts our metabolic rate. And although I could go down a rabbit hole into what I'll be talking about tomorrow with high-intensity interval training and all sorts of different things that can raise your metabolic rate for up to 72 hours, what I'll say today is there is an equation of you need to be burning more calories than your body requires on a daily basis. Now, here's the other factor that goes into this. In order to maximize this, you want to keep blood sugar levels stable throughout the day. You want to keep insulin levels lower. And to do that, you need to keep your blood glucose levels more stable. Now, in order to do that, you don't want to eat meals that are really spiking your overall blood sugar. We do that through a healthy balance of protein, fiber, a lot of vegetables at each meal, and healthy fat. And most people will be able to do that. Now, getting back to the equation though, when you have extra body fat, what does that mean? Think about it this way. Your body is storing body fat for a couple different reasons. One is that you put in excess, but that excess used to actually be very good for us. It used to protect us for very specific reasons. If during that harvest time, September, October, November or so, we ate more food, the crops had already grown or we had more that we had gathered and we ate more, it would have actually spiked our blood sugar levels. The excess calories would have accumulated more body fat. And what would that have done? Well, if we added an extra 15 to 20 pounds of body fat, that would have created what more for us? It would have created more stored energy. Because body fat can be broken down in the future to use for energy. Why does that matter? Well, if food was at a minimum during the winter-based months or a time of more famine where things were not as plenty, your body could rely on all of these stored calories that it gets from that body fat. So your body fat actually would then slowly begin to break down as you take in less food. So let's say that you took in 500 calories a day. Well, your body would then offset that 500 calories for all of its normal metabolic processes by actually breaking down body fat and being able to use that stored energy, which is looked at as calories. Now, important part to look at this as well. During those times, though, and that's why I'm an advocate of not over fasting for too long, the body would actually begin to shut down and slow thyroid. So you'd actually have what's called a higher TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone level. It would be above a 2. And the reason is that your body is down regulating hormonal and metabolic processes. You might feel your hands and feet a little bit more cold, the skin a little bit more dry, the hair starting to thin out a little bit. And the reason is that your body's conserving. And this is what we have to watch out for. This is why I can't recommend enough running that stress, mood, and metabolism lab or a thyroid adrenal hormone lab with your local functional medicine doctor or an integrative health practitioner or over at Equilibrium Nutrition. And the reason is this. If you're having difficulty losing weight, your body may have greatly slowed its metabolic processes, lowered your thyroid, potentially increased cortisol production because of stress, lowered progesterone, so now you're also dealing with estrogen dominance, so you feel like you're holding more water weight, you feel a little bit more puffy, a little lower mood, a little bit more irritable, maybe even starting to see a little bit of acne around the chin jawline area as well. Maybe even moving more towards irregular menstrual cycles. Very important to look at this, also to understand it affects women even more than men. And I can't go into that today, but I've gone into that on previous podcasts as to why from a survival-based perspective. Okay, so now that we know that body fat is actually used in the future potentially as stored energy, we can begin to look at the nutrition plans that will affect this. We have to understand is that we can't go too low calorie for someone that has difficulty losing weight. The reason is that they then believe they're in more of a starvation-based state. The body moves more into that survival state. It begins to lower thyroid, increase stress hormones, potentially decrease progesterone, and we end up again with estrogen dominance. So that's very important to look at that. But we also need to make sure that we have a lot of good quality food, that we're still doing intermittent fasting, but we're getting the majority of those calories from good quality vegetables, a little bit of berries, good quality proteins, and healthy fats. Don't stay away from your healthy fats just because you might have a little extra body fat. Your avocados, potentially some nuts and seeds, your olives, olive oil are all fantastic. We still need those. What we want to do, though, is absolutely nourish the body, over-nourish the body with micronutrients, but not necessarily macronutrients. So you still want to get your 7 to 9 servings of your fruit and vegetables every day, predominantly vegetables, and predominantly lower glycemic vegetables when you're looking to burn more body fat. Nourish that body. Use the Daily Foundation Protocol Level 2. Use the Daily Fruit and Vegetable Blend. Get all of your vitamins for the day. Tell your body you are not starving. Tell your body you're not in a survival-based state because you're getting all of your nutritional requirements. Allow your body to boost its metabolic processes through thermogenesis, through boosting thyroid, through lowering stress hormones, through balancing blood sugar levels, etc. Now, you can do that. Our Fatlocity system also teaches you all of this as well. And it gives you specific herbs. It gives you specific neurotransmitter precursors. All of these things proven by science. That's the Fatlocity system. Again, but going back to this, whole food, lower glycemic, including all of the macros. Don't just eat protein. Don't just eat fat. Eat all of the macros, balanced, and not necessarily overfeeding at any one meal. Because we don't want what's called a glycemic load, higher glycemic load, which actually spikes blood sugar as well. So what does that mean? Well, you can eat a meal of lower glycemic food, but it will actually spike your blood sugar. How does that happen? Well, it's a higher glycemic load, which means it's a lot on your digestive system, and it can also spike blood sugar in the same exact way. Okay, so want to eat cleanly, want to follow what we've been talking about on the Cabral concept. The Foundation of All Diets is also a good podcast to look at and check out as well. Again, unbiased research about really what works. Now let's move on to this. We're burning body fat. You're following your favorite online program, your favorite online diet plan, your favorite system, whatever it is, okay? That is for you to decide. I always want to make sure that you can use the same programs that our private wellness clients do here in Boston, that you can use these all over the world. And again, we give those to you. A lot of the education is even free. Like if you go to fatlocity.com or equilibriumnutrition.com/fatlocity, you can see exactly how we help people lose weight. We don't hold anything back. If you look at our functional medicine detox, you see exactly what we're going to have you do. And all of these things do work. All right, but here's the thing though. So what happens to that mass? This was the question, and I want to read this verbatim to you, okay? This is very interesting. This was done by two authors, Ruben Meerman, assistant scientist at UNSW, and Andrew Brown, professor and head, School of Biotechnology and Biomolecular Sciences, UNSW as well. So I want to share this with you because here was the question that they posed to 150 doctors, dietitians, and personal trainers. And 98% of them did not get it right. And actually, in this particular survey, only 3 out of the 100, so it equated to 3 out of the 150 doctors, dietitians, and personal trainers did not get this right. And I'm going to be honest with you. And I want you to ask yourself, the answer to this question. When we lose weight, where does it go? So where does the mass go? That's the question. And that threw me off because I answered like a lot of other doctors and dietitians. That was my first thought. My first thought is, that energy, that stored energy, or that those stored calories, that stored fat, went to be metabolized as part of the Krebs cycle, part of the citric acid cycle. It was actually used as nutrition for the body. But I misinterpreted the question. I did not hear it. I did not understand it. And that's on me. And most other people didn't get it. So do you know the answer to this? And obviously you can just ask yourself. You can be honest with yourself. When we lose weight, where does it go? And a better phrasing for this would be, where does the mass go? Now, they didn't ask it like that, but this is a better way to ask it. Where did the actual mass go? And I want to read this to you because this is very fascinating and very few people will probably remember this from their biochemistry-based days. So I'm going to read it to you verbatim from the two authors. Even if the 150 doctors and dietitians and personal trainers who were surveyed for this understood where it was coming from And they all, well, I'll go verbatim. We'll put it this way. Let me back up a second. I'm going to actually read exactly what they said. So they said, some respondents thought fat turns into muscle, which is impossible, and others assumed it escaped via the colon. A biggest misconception was that fat was converted to energy, and only 3 out of the 150 responders gave the correct answer. So, if not energy, muscles, or the loo, where does the fat go? The correct answer is that fat is converted to carbon dioxide and water. You exhale the carbon dioxide and the water mixes into your circulation until it's lost as urine or sweat. If you lose 10 kilograms of fat, precisely 8.4 kilograms comes out through your lungs, and the remaining 1.6 kilograms turns into water. And you could just look at this. I'm going to ad lib here for a second. You could look at this 10 pounds of fat, 8.4 coming out as through the lungs being huffed off, and then 1.6 coming in water. So nearly all of the weight we lose is exhaled, basically as vapor through the lungs, carbon dioxide. This surprises just about everyone, but actually almost everything we eat comes back via the lungs. Every carbohydrate you ingest and nearly all the fats are converted to carbon dioxide and water. The same goes for alcohol. Protein shares the same fate, except for a small part that turns into urea and other solids, which you excrete as urine. The only thing in food that makes it to your colon undigested and intact is dietary fiber. Everything else you swallowed is absorbed into your bloodstream and organs, and after that, it's not going anywhere until it's vaporized. So I'm not going to go on and on about this, but basically it's talking about the actual mass we lose as weight gets vaporized, gets breathed out, huffed out as we call it in the fitness industry, through the lungs, and the remaining part as water that can be sweat out or through the urine. So really interesting. I know not everyone will find that as interesting as I did, but that is actually where the body weight goes, where the body fat goes, where the mass goes when you lose weight. Couple reasons why I brought that up and why I believe now it's important, now that we know that, in order to include these 4 to 5 things. This is super important. 1, hydration. Keep your body hydrated. When you are losing body fat, you need to make sure that you're taking in at least half your body weight in ounces of water per day. I'm going to go through these quickly, okay, because I've done shows on all of them individually. The second is this: get enough fiber in. Get enough fiber so that everything that is coming through that digestive-based tract does not get locked up, does not get reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. Make sure that you are moving your bowels once to twice to potentially even 3 times per day. If you're not having 1 bowel movement or more per day, there is something imbalanced within your gut microbiome and digestive system. The third is this: if you are able to use a sauna when looking to burn body fat. Allow your body an easier way to get out these toxins, which come from the adipose tissue as well. I've done a podcast on toxic fat, what's stored in your adipose tissue, and allow your body to just safely and easily get that out of your body through sweat. And of course, you're going to be doing that through your lungs and exercise and urine as you're staying hydrated. All right, 2 more. The next one is fasting. Do make sure that you're fasting 12 to 14 hours to maybe even 16 hours overnight, and you're allowing your body to tap into adipose tissue to burn as a fuel for fat. The last one is this: a nice way to mobilize circulation, to mobilize the lymphatic system, which is going to help your body also drain, get that fat out of the body, also move those toxins along, is by doing dry brushing or abhyanga, which is a form of self-massage. So we're actually moving the lymph towards the greater lymphatic duct system over on the left side of the chest. And what we want to do, the greater thoracic duct, that's the word I was looking for. And that then allows all of the systems to work in unison. You will, at a more effective and easier and with less Herxheimer-based reactions, be able to get this toxic fat out of your body. So hopefully today's podcast was helpful. A little science mixed with hopefully a little bit of practicality. And of course, if this show was helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone you believe it can serve. And always do go back to stephencabral.com/podcast. Today's show was episode 1475, but there are so many previous shows on all of these different topics that you'll be able to really enhance this knowledge if a lot of it was new for you today. Thank you so much. Take care, and I'll be chatting with you tomorrow on our Training Thursday show. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.